For me, it's like this with this particular situation, because I'm cool with Steve, but Dave's my big bro at the same time. So to me, it's like this. Whenever Dame does an interview, you know about 90% of the time, Jay-Z's name is going to get brought up. And it seems like Dame is just always saying something negative or something not positive.
What happens when Harlem's strongest brotherhood turns into its biggest betrayal? Dame Dash, Cam'ron, and Mase are no longer allies, they're enemies. And this feud isn't just about pride, it's about money, power, and survival. It often begins in whispers, an offhand remark on a podcast, a stray post online, the kind of chatter that feels harmless at first. But in hip-hop, whispers have a way of swelling into storms, and Harlem, a borough built on bravado and myth, knows how quickly sparks can catch flame. This week, those faint murmurs erupted into a full-scale blaze. What began with Dame Dash, seated in yet another jaw-clenching interview, his voice steady but sharp as he lobbed accusations at his old comrades Cam'ron and Mase, soon spread far beyond the walls of that dimly lit studio. Within hours, timelines were clogged. Podcasts scrambled to dissect every barbed sentence, and what might have remained a private disagreement turned into a public saga. Messy and magnetic. Dash has never been the type to bite his tongue, and this latest round of confessions was no exception. He aired his grievances with the Harlem duo with unfiltered fury, sketching a story of betrayal, fractured brotherhood, and loyalty abandoned. To hear him tell it, these weren't just petty arguments about business or personal slights. They were cuts deep enough to draw blood accusations of backstabbing, of failed respect, of friendships soured by the treachery of an industry that too often pits allies against one another. In Dame's retelling, he wasn't simply another participant in hip-hop's endless carousel of feuds. He was a general wounded in battle, once a leader at the vanguard of culture, a man who helped steer Roc-A-Fella from street-level ambition to global dominance. Dash now cast himself as the discarded visionary, misunderstood, cast aside, unappreciated, and even sabotaged by the very brothers who once swore allegiance to him. He framed it like a Shakespearean betrayal, Harlem style, a story where trust was the first casualty, and pride the last weapon standing. To understand why this moment hit so hard, you have to step back into Dame's world. In the late 90s and early 2000s, he wasn't just a businessman, he was a cultural force, with Jay-Z on the mic, Kareem Bigsburg in the shadows, and Dash orchestrating from the boardroom to the block. Roc-A-Fella became an empire. Dame was the loudest voice in the room, the man who stormed into Def Jam offices, demanding respect for his artists, the one who made executives squirm while his crew reaped the rewards of independence. He prided himself on being the dealmaker who wouldn't bow, the hustler who could outtalk, outwork, and outnegotiate anyone in the game. His legend was built on defiance. But legends come with cracks, and over the years, the cracks widened. Jay-Z moved on, Roc-A-Fella splintered, Dame's ventures faltered. The brash bravado that once inspired admiration began to sound like noise. Lawsuits piled up, financial struggles became public, and through it all, Dash clung to the persona of the misunderstood genius, the man who built kingdoms only to watch them snatched away by snakes and sellouts. So when he sat down and started unloading on Cam and Mase, Harlem didn't just hear a man venting, they heard a pattern repeating. Dame Dash setting fire to yet another bridge, another relationship scorched by the flames of pride and grievance. His words weren't casual, they were incendiary, designed to wound. He accused his former Harlem brothers of betrayal, painting them as opportunists who disrespected the bond they once shared. And the public ate it up. In today's media landscape, nothing fuels clicks faster than conflict. Podcasts thrive on the drama, social feeds accelerate it, and audiences hunger for it, scrolling for the next viral clip or quotable insult. The spectacle of Dame Dash, once feared in boardrooms, now reduced to airing his wounds on camera, was too compelling to look away from. Every sigh, every clenched jaw, every cutting phrase became part of the narrative. It wasn't just a feud, it was a show, and the internet turned the lights on bright. Yet beneath the noise, there was something undeniably human in Dame's eruption. Pride is a double-edged sword, and for Dash, pride has always been his engine. It's what drove him to kick down doors when the industry wanted to shut him out. It's what made him demand that Harlem's hustle deserved the same respect as Wall Street's suits. But that same pride also isolates. It blinds. It makes every slight feel fatal, every disagreement a war, every shifting alliance a betrayal. To the casual observer, It might look like another petty hip-hop beef, but in truth, this clash carries weight because of the history woven into it. Harlem isn't just geography, it's mythology. It's the Apollo Theater, the hustler's code, the street corner turned stage. Cam'ron and Mase aren't just artists, they're Harlem's ambassadors, storytellers who turned neighborhood slang into national anthems. For Dame to turn his fire on them isn't just personal, it's cultural. It pits old alliances against new realities, history against reinvention, legacy against survival. As Dame raged, positioning himself as the wronged general abandoned by his troops, audiences couldn't help but notice the contrast. Cam and Mase, now in their second act as podcast kings, laugh freely, trade stories, reinvent themselves for a new generation. They've found a way to turn Harlem's lore into entertainment, blending nostalgia with relevance. Meanwhile, Dame's voice trembles between rage and sorrow. A man still wrestling with the ghosts of glory days gone. And that's what makes this saga resonate. It's not just about who said what in an interview, it's about watching a former Titan grapple with the weight of his own legend. The tension isn't simply between Dame, Cam, and Mase, it's between past and present. Between what was built and what was lost. Between loyalty as a slogan and loyalty as a lived reality. Harlem raised them all, but Harlem doesn't forgive weakness. It celebrates survival, reinvention, hustle without pause. So when Dame Dash sits under the studio lights, his words cutting sharp as broken glass, we see more than a feud. We see the collision of pride and pain, of history and hubris. We see a man who refuses to bow, even as the world tilts against him, holding tight to the story that he was the visionary, the kingmaker, the general betrayed by his own. It's messy, it's raw, and it's the kind of theater hip-hop has always thrived on. The whispers are gone now, the storm is here, and Harlem, as always, is watching.
Got surgery on his eye because they had to remove liquid that's in his eye because he's diabetic. And then he goes to the teeth and he says that they're currently sitting in his dentist's office and that he had... What
is wrong with you?
What?
So he said that they currently sit in his dentist's office.
Yeah.
What about the pair that he had in? Because I was looking at that video, girl. They was clean.
Harlem has never been known for restraint, and this clash was no exception. Cam'ron and Mase wasted no time spinning Dame's outburst into podcast fuel, delivering what can only be described as a merciless roast. In the studio, they wore their laughter like armor, seizing every chance to ridicule Dame's image of resurrecting that infamous photo of him without his front teeth, gleefully parading it before millions online. Cam'ron, especially, took center stage, firing off a sarcastic Instagram jab. "My bad. Sincerely, if you mad, but I'm glad you got that off your chest." The mocking didn't stop there. It only sharpened. In a cutting move, Cam'ron dragged Dame's family tensions into the spotlight, reposting raw clips from growing up hip-hop where Dash clashed with his own son. He capped it off with a stinging line: "If this is how you talk to your kids on TV, none of us have a chance at a peaceful convo." The message was brutal and crystal clear. If Dame can't command respect in his own household, how can he claim authority in Harlem's arena?
Wait till you get it together to come out and
Nah.
and say,
No, it was.
I gotta address Cam. Okay, I gotta get back at Cam right now. I can't wait.
But they've been going back and
The laughter that echoed from Cam'ron and Mase wasn't just about payback, it was about stripping away dignity. Dame wasn't just angry, he was cornered, exposed, and, above all, humiliated. You could hear it in his own reluctant admissions, muttering lines like "bosses take losses" while conceding that Cam had been talking too much, sometimes respectfully but often in ways that should have never left private conversations. But by then, the damage was irreversible. Every crack in Dash's armor, his financial struggles, his slipping influence in the industry, his televised arguments with family became ammunition for Harlem's most merciless comedians. What unfolded was less a feud and more a public dismantling of the myth of Dame Dash. And yet, the surface drama might only be half the story. Beneath the noise, whispers suggest a more calculated war playing out off camera. The rumor mill insists Dame has been running a shadow campaign against his former protégés, blacklisting Cam and Mase behind the scenes. Industry insiders allege that Dash has leaned on his connections, whispering their names in the wrong rooms, quietly working to block major deals before they landed. A former Roc-A-Fella road manager even claimed that Dame has never shied away from cutting people off if it served his power. If true, this isn't just bruised pride, it's strategy. The fight isn't only about respect but about leverage, legacy, and money. The question hanging in the air is heavy. Is Dame simply lashing out from a place of bitterness? Or is this the opening move in a long-brewing revenge play designed to settle scores decades in the making?
I mean, he has talked about Cam'ron and, like, you know, putting...
He just talks about people in general
putting
when they're not in the
movies
room.
and stuff like that.
Yes.
But the point that Dame Dash is trying to make here, and to your point, I don't know if it stands because he does talk a lot about people, is that Cam'ron should just be picking up the phone and call.
Dame, of course, won't validate the whispers swirling around him. Instead, he doubles down on his preferred narrative, the misunderstood visionary. Forced to start from scratch, time and time again. I've had to build new companies from nothing, he insists. Styling himself as a kind of proud broke, not broke, he argues, because he still has proof of what he's built. But the martyr routine is hard to sell when the receipts tell another story. Court filings show a judge ordering him to liquidate what remained of his Roc-A-Fella stake to cover more than $800,000 in debts. Even his share, rumored to include a piece of Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubt, has been put on the auction block. Dash tried to flip the moment into empowerment, hinting that Cam and Mase were on the short list of potential buyers. They could have it, they might have it, he teased. Yet the words rang hollow. The reality felt harsher. A mogul once untouchable, now boxed in, playing defense against the very industry he swore he'd never bow to. Cam'ron and Mase, naturally, turned the whole thing into another punchline. On their podcast, Mase flashed a stack of bills, pretending to be let's just say I did for $20 times who knows how much, he joked, while Cam played along, smirking, hypothetically. It might have already happened. Each laugh, each wink to the audience, underlined the shift in power. Harlem's throne now rests with them, while Dame lingers on the outside, grasping at the edge of relevance. And then there's the story too wild to ignore, the infamous baseball bat tale. For years, Mase has leaned on it as proof of loyalty and street honor, casting himself as the vulnerable target, rescued by Cam'ron when Dame allegedly threatened violence. Retold recently on Stephen A. Smith's platform, the story paints a cinematic scene. Dame, enraged over Roc-A-Fella business, moves in for a fight, only for Cam to step up, bat in hand, ready to defend his friend. Cam chuckled at the memory, noting it was a hard call since they'd all once been tight, but he admitted, the thing about Dame is, he's one step below a professional boxer. It's a gripping tail, but maybe too polished. Behind closed doors, skeptics are calling it fiction. One Harlem promoter scoffed, that bat never came out, not with people around. You think Dame Dash gets punked in public? Please. Some suggest the story was staged. A PR trick designed to reshape Mase's image after decades of whispers, branding him soft. What better way to flip the narrative than to place Cam as his enforcer in a fable of Harlem brotherhood? Whether truth, exaggeration, or myth, no one seems willing to set the record straight. In Harlem, legends live longer than facts.
I'm saying, so when I hear things about Dame, it seems like people only tell the bad side because the person who has the most money is on the other side. That's the part I don't like, you know? So when I hear certain things, I don't like it. And
follow the money, and the whole picture sharpens. Dame's finances have become the running gag of this food fodder for Harlem's sharpest tongues. In one of his more ruthless riffs, Cam'ron painted Dash's downfall like a foreclosure tour, rattling off the private jets, the London estates, the Soho law. Bro, if you live like that, you got to keep hustling. You can't go buy all that stuff you bought. Cam snapped, his tone a mix of mockery and pity. The punchline was cruel but cutting. Dame had made enough to never work again. Yet somehow he kept chasing, and in the process, lost it all. In Harlem, that lesson cuts deep, because hustle isn't just about money. It's about survival. And the moment you stop, the city decides you're finished. Dash tries to reframe it all as the cost of betting on himself. But the receipts keep surfacing. Lawsuits, failed ventures, debts stacked high. Even his Roc-A-Fella shares, the last piece of his empire, were dragged into the spectacle. The courts demand their sale. Jay-Z and Biggs stall in the background. And rumors swirl that Cam and Mase might swoop in as buyers. It's poetic irony. The once gatekeeper reduced to watching his rivals toy with the keys to the house he built. On their podcast, the two leaned into the theater of it, all Mase flashing cash, Cam smirking about hypotheticals. Every joke a reminder that Harlem's crown had shifted. But if the money feud feels brutal, the legends that orbit it are even messier. Take the baseball bat story, Mase's favorite myth, where Cam supposedly stepped in to defend him from Dame's wrath. Retold with cinematic flair, it paints Cam as protector, Mase as loyal brother, and Dame as the looming villain. Yet behind closed doors, industry vets roll their eyes. That bat never came out. One Harlem promoter scoffed. Maybe it was PR spin. Maybe it was self-preservation, but in Harlem, where myth often carries more weight than truth, the story has stuck. And that's the real sting of this saga. It's not just about who landed the sharpest meme or who clowned who hardest on a podcast. It's about how quickly loyalty erodes when money, pride, and power shift. Once upon a time, Dame, Cam, and Mase stood side by side. Harlem's promise embodied young kings carving out space in an industry that wasn't built for them. Roc-A-Fella was supposed to be proof that respect and hustle could coexist, that the streets and the boardroom could meet on equal terms, but cracks appeared early. Whispers of jealousy, unpaid advances, business handled with handshakes that later morphed into lawsuits. Some trace it back to fights over women in Jay-Z's orbit, others to Cam's arrival at ROC, or Mase's uneasy role in the shuffle. However it started, the bond was fragile from the jump. Respect turned into resentment at the speed of money. Dame's bravado, once his greatest weapon, became his downfall, pushing away partners and poisoning trust. Even those who once praised his genius began echoing the same refrain. His ego made him impossible to work with. The man who once orchestrated Harlem's most audacious rise was left with nothing but echoes of his own legend. Meanwhile, Cam and Mase have rewritten themselves for a new era, embracing the mic, the memes, and the shifting spotlight. What was once a brotherhood has curdled into a spectacle, a cautionary tale about how hip-hop loyalty bends, breaks, and finally collapses when empire gives way to ego.
Speaking of Puffy, what was the issue between Mase and Jay?
I don't remember. I really don't. I don't remember. I just remember when he went with Puff, and he went from like Mace Mussolini to like the shiny suits, and I felt that that was a contradiction of who I knew from like Children of the Corn.
Even as headlines shout betrayal and sabotage, a deeper question lingers. Is Dame Dash his own worst enemy? Strip away the business deals and strategic maneuvers, and what emerges is a pattern too familiar to ignore. Time and again, Dash has set fire to his own bridges, whether through explosive interviews, public meltdowns, or impulsive rants that spiral across social media. From clashes with former partners to shouting matches with family on reality TV, chaos seems less like an accident and more like his comfort zone. In Harlem, his pride was always legendary, but that same pride now feels like both his engine and his undoing, propelling him forward while leaving him isolated once the dust settles. What makes it so striking is the timing. These eruptions often hit just as Dame appears on the verge of something new, a comeback, a fresh partnership, a second act. Instead of locking in stability, he pushes people away with the same ferocity that once built his empire. Insiders whisper that his need to control every narrative, every deal, every relationship has turned into a curse. The instincts that made him formidable are now the ones that fracture every alliance. It's less a business story than a psychological loop: success sabotaged by ego, power undermined by pride. What once looked like vision now reads like self-destruction, a kingpin forced into defense mode, retreating into wounded pride after every public lashing. Meanwhile, Cam and Mase reinvent themselves with laughter and longevity, their scars turned into currency. Dame's struggle feels almost Shakespearean, tragic, riveting, and painfully human. And then there's the money. Numbers don't just tell the story, they sharpen the blade. The same man who once flaunted private jets and scooped up Soho lofts just to flex has been forced by a federal judge to auction off his last real asset, his 1/3 stake in Roc-A-Fella. More than $800,000 in debt sealed the order, transforming honor up from a movie title into an industry punchline. Every headline announcing the sale chipped away at his legacy, while Cam and Mase turned the spectacle into content. Their podcast became more than entertainment, it evolved into a revenge economy. Every viral clip, every smirk about Dame's downfall, every joke about his finances didn't just sting, it paid. In real time, Harlem watched one man's empire collapse, while two others built new fortunes on top of the rubble. Call it irony, call it strategy, but in the end, Cam and Mase didn't just win in public opinion, they won twice. Once with the laughs, and again at the bank. Dame insists he's tried to reach out, claiming he's picked up the phone a few times to call Cam, only to be met with silence. But at this stage, it's clear, this feud isn't just about business, it's deeply personal. The sale of his Roc-A-Fella shares wasn't merely a financial loss, it was a public unmasking, a humiliation made all the sharper by Cam and Mase gleefully turning it into content. Watching them build a new empire from the ruins of his own has left Dash with little more than pride and, perhaps, one final weapon. Industry insiders whisper that Dame still knows how to play dirty. Rumors persist of blacklists and whispered warnings, back-channel calls to power brokers designed to freeze Cam and Mase out of lucrative deals. One veteran A&R put it bluntly, Dame might be down, but don't count him out. He knows where the bodies are buried. No label has confirmed it, but the tension hangs heavy, because in Harlem, power doesn't fade quietly. What's unfolding feels bigger than a feud. It's a fight for authorship for who gets to write the next chapter in hip-hop's Harlem story. Money, power, pride, reputation, they're all on the table, and the stakes cut deeper than memes and sound. For every viral clip of Cam and Mase laughing at Dame's expense, there's the lingering sense that Dash has one more move tucked away, one last card that could shift the board. The question is whether that move will restore his place or finally seal his fate, because in this saga, there are no clean endings, just shifting alliances, decades-old grudges, and the constant reminder that in hip-hop, as in Harlem itself, loyalty is fragile and receipts last forever.